11:42 p.m. on a Tuesday in a high-security office building in downtown Manhattan. A senior risk intelligence analyst presses the enter key. A highly classified PDF document is finalized and encrypted. The file contains the latest operational mapping of a massive offshore illegal gambling syndicate. It details shell companies in Cyprus. It lists compromised merchant accounts in Panama. It identifies the payment processing pipelines used to launder millions of dollars of illicit casino revenue. The analyst uploads the file to a secure internal server isolated behind multiple layers of enterprise-grade firewalls and AES 256 encryption. He logs off believing the intelligence is safe. 8,000 miles away in a dimly lit apartment in Moscow, Andrei Tyurin opens the exact same PDF document. He reads the analyst's conclusions in real time. He does not need to crack the encryption. He does not need to guess the passwords. He is already inside the network. This is not a standard data breach. This is a live broadcast of a federal investigation watched by the primary suspect as it unfolds. Tyurin has achieved the ultimate tactical advantage. He has compromised a premier United States merchant risk intelligence firm. These firms are not standard corporate targets. They are the apex predators of the financial sector. They are hired by major credit card networks and federal agencies to hunt down money laundering operations. They possess the most advanced threat detection algorithms on the planet. They track illicit money flows across the globe. They freeze assets. They dismantle illegal online casinos. Their internal servers are the digital equivalent of a high-security military bunker. They hold the blueprints and operational strategies of ongoing federal cyber investigations. Breaking into this infrastructure requires an astronomical level of sophistication. Tyurin did not use brute force. He utilized surgical precision and absolute patience. The infiltration began months prior with a microscopic vulnerability. A single unpatched outward-facing web server, a forgotten line of code left exposed during a routine system update. It was a microscopic crack in a massive digital fortress. Tyurin detected it using automated scanning arrays deployed from compromised botnets. He did not immediately smash the door down. He carefully inserted a customized payload designed specifically for this architecture. The code was engineered to be entirely invisible to standard intrusion detection systems. It bypassed the perimeter firewalls without triggering a single alert. Once inside the initial server, Tyurin began a slow, methodical process of privilege escalation. He harvested administrative credentials left in temporary memory banks. He moved laterally through the network topology. He hopped from one internal server to another, masking his traffic as legitimate internal communications. He mapped the entire digital geography of the intelligence firm. He located the central repositories where the most sensitive investigative dossiers were stored. A typical hacker would have deployed ransomware, locking the data and demanding millions. Tyurin is not a typical hacker. He understood that the true value of the data was not in destroying it, but in possessing it secretly. He established a persistent hidden backdoor. He programmed automated exfiltration nodes buried deep within the system registry. Every time an American risk analyst updated a file regarding the illegal casino syndicate, a perfectly mirrored copy was silently routed through a complex chain of proxy servers. The data packet bounced from New York to a compromised server in Egypt, then through a virtual private network in Germany, before finally illuminating the monitors in Moscow. Tyurin possessed total information dominance. He watched the investigators build the case against his own organization. He knew exactly where their digital tripwires were located. He knew their blind spots. The intelligence asymmetry was devastating. When the American analysts prepared to freeze a massive holding account in the Cayman Islands, Tyurin read the mandate. He transferred the funds to a secondary network in Macau 48 hours before the freeze order was executed. When the intelligence firm identified a specific payment processing gateway used by his illicit casinos, he had already decommissioned it and shifted the traffic to a new undetected pipeline. He was playing a game of chess where he could see his opponent's pieces and read their minds. The frustration within the risk intelligence firm began to mount. High-priority investigations began to stall inexplicably. Prime suspects vanished mere hours before the digital net could close. Server raids yielded nothing but empty hard drives. The statistical probability of such consistent bad luck dropped to absolute zero. A chilling consensus slowly formed among the senior security analysts. The perimeter had not held. The network was fundamentally compromised. They initiated a massive forensic internal sweep. Teams of cybersecurity experts analyzed terabytes of historical system logs looking for an anomaly. They dismantled their own infrastructure piece by piece. Eventually, they found the digital footprints. obfuscated malicious code fragments buried deep within legacy directories, unauthorized encrypted outbound traffic disguised as routine system updates. The horrifying reality materialized. The hunter realized the crosshairs had been painted on their own forehead. The surveillance system designed to track digital phantoms had been completely compromised by one. The psychological toll on the investigative teams was immense. Every internal email sent was immediately assumed to be compromised. Every secure telephone line was treated as tapped. Every strategic maneuver was considered compromised before it was even executed. The firm had to assume that years of sensitive intelligence gathering had been handed directly to the very syndicates they were trying to dismantle. Tyurin had not just blinded the radar. He had rewired the screen to show exactly what he wanted them to see. He used their own sophisticated algorithms against them. He analyzed their detection parameters and adjusted the transaction signatures of his illegal casinos to fall just below the threshold of suspicion. He turned the apex predators into blind sentinels guarding empty vaults, while the real robbery occurred in broad daylight. The sheer audacity of the operation was unprecedented. He was actively testing and refining his own malware against the most sophisticated financial threat detection engines in the United States, and he was winning. The invisible spectator from Moscow had successfully inverted the entire hierarchy of international cybersecurity. He proved that the thickest walls and the most advanced encryption are completely useless if the enemy is already sitting inside the control room. The digital cat and mouse game had been rigged from the very first move. The mouse was not running. The mouse was dictating the path of the maze. The intelligence harvested from the risk assessment firm was not used for evasion. It was weaponized for expansion. Andrei Tyurin and his partner Gary Shalon did not want to simply exist within the illegal online gambling market. They wanted an absolute monopoly. Standard corporate warfare relies on marketing budgets and customer acquisition algorithms. Tyurin relied on botnets and remote access trojans. The target parameters shifted from defensive monitoring to offensive strikes. They initiated a systematic digital slaughter of rival online casinos. The attacks were mechanically brutal. They did not just scrape databases. They crippled infrastructure. A competitor casino would be operating at peak volume on a Saturday night. Thousands of active players are placing digital bets. Without warning, the primary servers would encounter a massive synchronized data flood. A distributed denial of service attack generating hundreds of gigabytes of junk traffic per second. The physical server racks overheated. The cooling fans screamed. The load balancers collapsed under the synthetic pressure. The websites went dark. But the DDoS was only a smokescreen. While the rival IT administrators scrambled to mitigate the flood, Tyurin executed the primary breach. He exploited known vulnerabilities in the casino web applications. He bypassed the authentication protocols. He injected malicious scripts directly into the central database. He corrupted the core operating code. He locked the administrators out of their own control panels. When the competitor servers finally rebooted, the player ledgers were erased. The payout algorithms were scrambled. The rival casinos hemorrhaged millions of dollars in a matter of hours. Player trust evaporated instantly. But Tyurin and Shalon were waiting to catch the fallout. They needed a mechanism to funnel the frustrated players into their own illegal gambling empire. They required a massive marketing apparatus. They did not build one, they stole one. Tyurin pivoted his crosshairs toward major United States email marketing companies. These firms possessed legitimate, highly trusted server infrastructure. They handled commercial communications for Fortune 500 companies. Their IP addresses were whitelisted by every major internet service provider on the planet. Tyurin breached their perimeters using stolen administrative credentials and sophisticated phishing campaigns targeting their internal engineers. He hijacked the routing architecture. He seized control of the legitimate transmission gateways. Corporate executives woke up to terrifying diagnostic reports. Their pristine server IPs were suddenly blacklisted globally. He converted corporate communication networks into a massive illegal spam engine. Millions of promotional emails advertising Shalon's illicit casinos were fired from trusted American servers. They bypassed spam filters effortlessly. They landed directly in the primary inboxes of millions of potential gamblers. But a massive spam engine requires premium fuel. It requires a targeted high-net-worth database. Tyurin already possessed the largest database in existence. This was the true purpose behind the catastrophic breach of JPMorgan Chase. He had successfully infiltrated the largest financial institution in the United States. He bypassed their multi-million-dollar security perimeter. He extracted the personal information of 83 million bank customers. The federal government initially assumed the hack was a precursor to massive financial wire fraud. They braced for billions of dollars to vanish from checking accounts. They mobilized the Treasury Department. They were wrong. Tyurin did not steal the money directly. He stole the identities. He weaponized the data. The massive JPMorgan SQL database was fed directly into the hijacked email marketing servers. 83 million highly qualified financial profiles were transformed into prime targets for unregulated offshore casinos. The efficiency was terrifying. He turned bank clients into gambling addicts. While federal agents were locked inside Wall Street server rooms, desperately trying to patch the bank firewalls, Tyurin had already moved on. The stolen data was already generating massive revenue streams on a different continent. The federal response escalated. A global coalition of cybersecurity firms and international law enforcement agencies mobilized. They attempted to box him in. They deployed sophisticated honeypots. They created fake vulnerable servers designed to track his digital fingerprint. They analyzed the malware signatures line by line. They attempted aggressive reverse IP tracing. The digital cat and mouse game accelerated. The investigators would detect a command and control server in a data center in Egypt. They would secure international warrants. They would physically raid the facility. Heavily armed police would kick in the doors to find a rented rack of servers humming in the dark. The hard drives were entirely wiped. The connection had already been severed minutes before they arrived. Tyurin utilized a complex, constantly shifting proxy network. He routed his traffic through a maze of compromised machines spanning the globe. An attack on a casino in New Jersey would originate from an IP address in South Africa, bouncing through a virtual private network in the Czech Republic, before finally terminating at a residential router in Brazil. The actual origin point in Moscow remained buried beneath impenetrable layers of encrypted noise. He left mocking fragments of code in the server logs, a digital signature waving at the police. He watched the investigators chasing digital ghosts across international borders. He was managing a multi-million-dollar cybercrime syndicate from a single keyboard. The infrastructure he built was a masterpiece of illicit engineering. It was a closed-loop system. He stole the customer data. He hijacked the marketing channels to reach them. He destroyed the competitors to limit their options. He monitored the police to ensure his own safety. The operation was flawless. The code was perfect. The digital empire was absolutely secure from any virtual threat. But the fatal flaw was not located in the code. The fatal flaw was not located in the code. It was located in the physical world. The infrastructure required to maintain a global digital empire is not free. Servers must be rented. Bandwidth must be purchased in massive industrial quantities. Proxy networks demand continuous financial maintenance. The digital camouflage was impenetrable, but the financial ledger was grounded in the rigid mechanical reality of traditional banking. The United States Department of Justice and the Secret Service executed a massive tactical pivot. They stopped hunting for malicious code fragments. They stopped trying to reverse engineer the advanced encryption algorithms. They started hunting for the money. The digital ghost possessed a physical shadow. The investigators deployed teams of forensic accountants. They subpoenaed offshore payment processors. They analyzed hundreds of thousands of microtransactions flowing through obscure financial gateways in unregulated jurisdictions. They correlated the exact timestamps of anonymous server purchases with the precise milliseconds the competitor online casinos were destroyed by the DDoS attacks. A microscopic physical pattern emerged from the chaotic encrypted noise of global finance. A complex chain of shell companies registered in Cyprus. Cryptocurrencies meticulously tumbled through digital mixers and converted into fiat currency. The money was routed to pay for a specific high-capacity server rack in a German data center. The exact same server rack utilized to launch the massive spam campaigns that flooded American inboxes. The investigators followed the financial vascular system backward. They bypassed the sophisticated proxy servers completely. They followed the international wire transfers. The financial forensic net tightened. It bypassed the digital firewalls. It ignored the malware signatures. It zeroed in on a singular physical identity, Andrei Tyurin. He was no longer an anonymous digital phantom haunting the server logs. He was a recognized biological entity. But knowing the name was completely useless without physical jurisdiction. Tyurin resided in Moscow. The Russian Federation does not extradite its citizens to the United States under any circumstances. Within the borders of his home country, he was absolutely untouchable by Western law enforcement. His apartment was a fortress. His digital empire continued to generate millions of dollars in illicit revenue. The federal agencies possessed the complete diagnostic blueprint of his crimes, but they lacked the physical leverage to enforce the law. The stalemate was absolute. The cat and mouse game transitioned into a cold war of attrition. The FBI waited patiently. They monitored the international flight manifests. They integrated his biometric data into the global Interpol tracking database. They watched the physical borders. They relied on a fundamental psychological vulnerability: arrogance. Years of unchallenged supremacy and unprecedented wealth breeds catastrophic complacency. The master manipulator, who anticipated every digital countermeasure, failed to recognize his own expanding hubris. In September of 2018, Tyurin made a fatal mechanical error. He logged off his secure terminal. He packed a physical suitcase. He walked out of his secure Moscow apartment. He booked a commercial flight to the Republic of Georgia, a sovereign nation sharing a direct physical border with Russia, a sovereign nation possessing an active and highly robust extradition treaty with the United States of America. The tactical advantage instantly inverted. The moment his passport was scanned at the airport ticketing counter, a silent alarm triggered across a dozen federal databases in Washington. The hunter was finally caught in the open. The invisible spectator was now the subject of real-time physical surveillance. The DOJ watched his flight trajectory on a radar screen. There were no proxy servers to mask his physical altitude. There were no encrypted tunnels to hide his biological location. He stepped off the commercial aircraft onto the tarmac in Georgia. He approached the border control checkpoint. He handed his physical passport to the immigration officer. The barcode was scanned. The optical character recognition software processed the data. The Interpol red notice flashed on the terminal. The physical system reacted with brutal efficiency. Heavily armed Georgian state security personnel immediately surrounded him. The digital mastermind was instantly subdued by the mechanical reality of physical steel handcuffs. There was no keyboard to execute an escape sequence. There was no code to bypass the biological constraints of a prison cell. The absolute omnipotence he wielded in the digital realm vanished the exact second the physical locks engaged. He was stripped of his network. He was isolated from his empire. The extradition process was swift and highly clinical. He was transported across the Atlantic Ocean under heavy federal guard. He was placed inside a concrete holding cell in Manhattan, the exact same city where he had previously hacked the largest financial institution and monitored the most sophisticated risk intelligence firm. He was brought before a United States federal judge. The prosecution presented the staggering metrics of his digital warfare: the 83 million compromised banking records, the decimated competitor casinos, the hijacked global email infrastructure, the millions in illicit revenue generated by the illegal syndicate. The mathematical equation was finalized. The sentence was handed down: 144 months, 12 years in a maximum security federal penitentiary. The $19 million empire was systematically dismantled. The servers were seized. The domains were confiscated. The code was neutralized. The saga of Andrei Tyurin ends not with a complex cryptographic puzzle, but with a devastatingly simple paradox. He was a transcendent mathematical genius. He weaponized algorithms to bypass the most formidable digital fortresses ever constructed. He manipulated millions of variables perfectly. He turned the apex predators of the financial sector into blind victims. He predicted every tactical move of the federal government through their own compromised monitors. Yet the mastermind who calculated every digital probability down to the microsecond failed to compute the most basic mathematical risk of a commercial flight: the absolute vulnerability of biological movement. The system did not defeat his encryption. The system simply waited for him to walk out the front door.